everybody. So we got our Conquest Volume 14 data mine last night, and we got the data disks last night. And a couple notable things happened with that. Number one, this is the first time we're getting a conquest feat that requires us to kill a very specific enemy. And I mean, I'm not going to really get too much into that one because I know that it requires a boss feat that kind of, or a boss mechanic that kind of allows you to do that a little bit easier. But because this is the first time that this is happening, I don't really know what to expect until Conquest actually starts. It's also notable because it's the first time that we're only getting 140 wins feat, as well as a shift from our offensive discs back to our defensive discs. It's been quite a long time since we've seen things like Zealous Ambition. It's been quite a long time since we've seen things like Leader's Resolve. It's been quite a long time since we've seen things like Entrenched. Now, the flip side of that is we're losing discs that I personally love and I use every conquest, like Amplify Agony and Ruthless Swiftness. Now, last night I came up with a plan before I knew that the data disks were shifting, and I built all of these notes and I was sitting at my desk trying to figure it out. The data disks dropped and I kind of had to completely change what I was doing or what I was thinking of doing because there were a few feats that, well, I realized that were going to be a little bit tougher for me now that I wasn't able to rely on things like Lord Vader. The good news to that, though, is that while I'm not going to go over every single team that's going to work really, really well, okay, Bit Dynasty does a great job of that, Celiac Sarah does a really great job of that, I just want to kind of talk about my plan for Conquest. And looking at it, honestly, it's nothing too crazy. And I think that a lot of people, probably in the 7 million to the 11, 12 million range, will be able to benefit if they built their accounts out correctly. So we're going to kind of talk about what my plan is today. If you have any questions about that plan, or if you just want help, some really helpful people, my Discord is below, and I'm always available to help people. And we've, cultivated a community that is very helpful and is very active in that sense. So, without further ado, Conquest Cycle number 14, Queen Amidala edition. So, at first looking at this data mine, it's actually not too terrible, right? The first thing that I like to do always is look at the global feats. Defeat at least 250 enemies on the Golden Challenge path. That's pretty normal. We've had that for quite some time. Defeat 600 B1 battle droids. That's the one that I was referring to before. This is the first time we're asked to kill a very specific enemy. There is a boss that is going to allow us to do that. We have the specific mechanic for that on the event server, but we don't really have too much information about what's going on that node right now, so we'll kind of have to wait to see until Conquest starts. Win 40 battles with Galactic Republic. That's relatively easy. Okay, we've got our JMK team that a lot of people have. We have our gas team, which doesn't do super great in the later sectors, but with defensive discs and with Leader's Resolve, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. We have Bad Batch. We have Padme teams. This is not going to be too terribly hard, and you'll actually see as we go through the sectors that I am going to be kind of falling pretty heavily on my Galactic Republic teams to get me through anyway. We have win 20 battles with Keller and Beck and Ig 12 and Grogu. At first I thought this was going to be really daunting of a task because I don't have Bo-Katan. I have not prioritized Bo-Katan. I've been prioritizing Jar Jar Binks. But then I realized with the defensive data discs that we're getting, this is actually going to be relatively easy if you have Jedi Master Luke, who is one of the Galactic Legends that I think that a player should get pretty close to first. On my list, he's the second one that most people should get. So if we do something like Jedi Master Luke as a lead with Voluntary Vanguard, Keller and Beck, Ig 12 and Grogu, I would probably say Jedi Knight Luke and maybe like a Revan in there. We shouldn't have too much problem using that even as a push team. Not something we're going to use in Sector 5, but we might kind of want to build, if we get lucky with our data discs early, kind of use that as a push team early on. Win 20 battles with a full squad of light side Mandalorians. We've had that for the last 3 3 including this one, cycles, as long as we keep the same nodes as last time, I don't see this being terribly hard. Now, granted, I was using Amplify Agony and I was using Ruthless Swiftness, but I do think with things like Leader's Resolve, it'll still be a completely and 100% manageable feat for me and a lot of players. And then we have defeat 50 enemies with Stop. Okay, Stop. General Grievous team, newer marquee. Not a lot of people are going to have them at 7 stars. Originally, I was going to suggest the Lord Vader cheese. I was really nervous about this feat after finding out the data discs were changing. And then somebody on Reddit was really, really nice, and they reminded me of the Treya cheese, right? So sending in somebody like a Treya lead against Geonosis, or Geonosians with a strong tank and voluntary vanguard will allow you to bring basically the entire team to 1 HP very, very, very quickly and just clean up with the Stop AoE. I'm ignoring the over-prepared 1 active just because that's super, super, super quick. And then Booming Voice, you will get when you win the Stop feat, so it's not really that big of an issue. I don't know how other people like to do this. When it comes to the first conquest in a cycle, I try to beat everything, right? Just so I can see where the weaknesses are in my roster. So for the most part, I'm going to try to take everything out here, except for the things that I literally cannot physically do, like winning with Bo-Katan Mandalore surviving. I don't have her. I know for a fact that I cannot do that feat. So why waste my time hitting my head against the wall? But if I try my best to get everything here, I can kind of see what's going to be difficult for me, what's not going to be difficult for me, and I can readjust going forward. Now, going back to these data discs, here's what I'm looking for. I definitely want a Leader's Resolve, right? 100%. I don't have great Imperial Troopers, but I do have ones that are up there a little bit. So having Leader's Resolve is going to help me jumpstart them for some of the sectors where I am going to need those kills. I am going to be looking for Zealous Ambition because it completely supercharges a lot of the lower end teams with support. So things like Night Sisters that we're going to need, things like the Inquisitors who did really well with Amplify Agony will now do really well with Zealous Ambition. And if you don't have a JMK team, this completely throws a Padme team into overdrive and makes them super, super, super easy to work with. I'm also going to be looking for a Voluntary Vanguard. I love Voluntary Vanguard. I get very lucky looking for it. I'm hoping to see it in Sector 1 or 2. It's probably one of my more priority discs. If I see it towards the end, I'm still going to pick it up because it's going to help me build out some of the farm teams that I'm going to need for later. Once I have those 3, again, if I get all 3, Voluntary Vanguard, Leader's Resolve, and Zealous Ambition, I'm probably going to try, for me at least, to stick to things like Entrenched, okay, and Fortify as much as possible. I really liked this Fortify feat when it came out. I think last cycle, it might have been 2 cycles ago. It helps to keep those lower characters alive, and I really like that Entrenched data disc because it helps to mitigate that open it salve that the enemy team is going to have and kind of keep your entire team alive. So I'm not looking to get any of these, crazy epic ones, any of these 4 blip ones. A lot of people at the lower end, they do use them, they utilize them, and it helps them to push a little bit further. For myself, I prefer these lower end discs, things that are a little bit more common that I can rely on a little bit more. It makes my life a little bit easier. So here is my plan. Sector 1. Defeat 50 enemies with Jedi, gain defense up 80 times, attempt to inflict armor, shred 30 times, gain secret intel 80 times. I'm not even worried about the boss feats right now because I have no idea what those bosses are and I'll figure it out when I get there. At first glance, this actually looks pretty easy. And I noticed the defense up right away, and that actually kind of leads me into wanting to talk about something that I call, a soft cheese versus a hard cheese. Okay, I'd make like a cheese joke there, but I'm not really a cheese person, so I don't know many of them. But so a soft cheese to me is something that I'm going to try to cheese as I am progressing, but I'm not going to go too overboard with it, right? Because I know that I'm going to naturally build it up or that I can come back later and do it in 1 to 2 battles when I get further on. So things like using Clone Wars Chewbacca as a lead here will get me defense up in 1 to 2 battles, but I think that by the time I get to the end of Sector 1, I'll have it anyway. I'm not worried. If I do get to the end of Sector 1 and I find that I'm still pretty low, I'm going to just ignore it till the end. And once I finish Sector 5, I'll see what global feats still need to be done. And if there's anything I can do with defense up, I'll do it. A hard cheese is something that you're just not going to be able to do without cheesing it, right? So that's something that we're always going to want to do in like that 1, 2, 3 battles. For me, that's going to be Sector 3 with Momentum, where we have very specific teams that I can battle. For other people, that's going to depend on what their team compositions are. So for Sector 1, I'm isolating Jedi Master Kenobi, Gas, Cam, Barriss, and GK as my original push team. Now my Cam is only G11, so not super strong. I'm hoping that the data discs will keep him alive. If it doesn't, it's not that big of a deal. I'll go back and clean it up later. That's going to give me Jedi kills, right? Everybody on that team is a Jedi. That's also going to give me my Grand Republic wins, so it's going to help me with my global feats. I'm going to build armor shreds with Gas and Cam, okay? And I'm going to get defense up through some of the characters and their mechanics there. I'm not going to get a ton of that through Barriss, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. Like I said, I'll build that up a little bit later. For the first couple of battles, I am going to try and go a little bit slower, right? Because Armor Shred is a pain in the ass. There's a lot of characters that do it, but it's just one of those feats that nobody likes to do with pushing. So I'm going to try to slow it down so that Gas and Cam can try to get as many as possible pretty early on so that you don't have to worry about it later. I could throw Kat in there for another one, but she's not a Jedi, which means every kill she gets is going to take away from my Jedi kills. Now, if I start to get towards the middle of the sector and I find that I finished up something, like the Jedi kills in the first couple of battles, if I got lucky, maybe I got a Night Sisters team and I got a bunch of revives, then I can throw Kat in there to kind of build my armor shreds a little bit more. I don't have to worry about my Jedi kills so much. I'm also going to be using my Rey team, right? So I've got Rey, Finn, Rose, BB-8, and Hero Finn. With defensive data discs, Rey does really well. This is going to very easily give me my secret intel. It's going to very easily give me my defense up, right? Rose spreads it. Finn spreads it. I need to get 80 of these. I can probably do that in like 2, 3, maybe 4 battles. I'm going to try to make them slower battles again, just to see if I can get as much defense up as possible without having to go back and cheese it later. But I'm not too worried about it. You can also use a Finn-led team if you don't have Rey, and you could go with a Zori team, right? That'll work just as well. Well, I don't know if it'll work just as well, but it'll still work relatively well, especially with defensive data discs, keeping everything alive. In this sector, I'm not actually looking for anything special, right? I don't really care what nodes I'm going for as long as they're not things like a Jawa or a Mandalorian or a Padme squad. If I can avoid those, I can. But I'm also going to try and stay on the challenge path to maximize the amount of attempts I get at the data discs that I particularly want. I'm not concerned about this sector at all. Sector 2, we have win 14 battles with no attackers, evade at least 100 attacks in battles if you won, attempt to inflict plague 400 times, which I think is a doubling from last time. It sucks, but it is what it is. Gain health steal up 60 times, which I think is 3 times the amount it was last time. And then we have all of our boss feats. We're going to ignore those for now. So Sector 2, I am well known for my Night Sisters team. I am going to be using and leaning on that team pretty heavily here. Mother Talzin, Merrin, Old Daka, Zombie, Asajj Ventress. I'm going to get my no attackers, and I'm going to get my plague. Now, this is not a foresight feat, it's an evade feat, so I will get some evade as well, but it's not a heavy evasion team, so I don't expect to go too crazy with it. I am going to need 400 plague. That honestly, depending on the teams I get, is not going to take me too terribly long. But since I need no attacker feats anyway, I'm going to be using my Night Sisters pretty heavily. Um, if you manage to get your plague early, and you can honestly do this with fairly low Night Sisters as long as they're in the G12 or so range and you have the good data discs, you might be able to lean into like a Padme team as long as you're using all supports and all tanks. If you get a super early Zealous Ambition, that's going to be a great push team that I might end up working with just to get my Grand Republic wins in there, and also to get my no attacker wins in there as well. For my real Grand Republic push team, I'm going to go JMK, Grandmaster Yoda, Ahsoka Tano, General Kenobi, and Mace Windu. And the reason I'm going to do that is Shatterpoint, Grandmaster Yoda, and GK are all going to spread Foresight, which is going to help me with my evasion. It's also going to give me my Grand Republic wins, right? So again, pretty straightforward. When we go to Health Steal, now I have Lord Vader. I know not everybody has Lord Vader. You can do this with a pop-up help lead as well. It might be just a little bit slower. If you do it with like pop-up help lead and you throw Malik and Malgus in there and maybe Thrawn, you can kind of rotate around enough to get a bunch of those health steals pretty quickly. But I'm going to do something like Lord Vader, Papa Palp, Darth Bane, Malik, and Malgus. Right, Lord Vader is going to spread a lot of dots, which I don't necessarily want, but because I'm not using Amplify Agony, it shouldn't be a terribly big problem. But Malik, Malgus, and Bane are going to soak up a lot of damage. Papa Palp is going to spread health steal up, and Darth Bane is going to spread health steal up. So my goal is to try to get that done in like 2 battles if possible. I'm not really looking for any specific nodes. There's nothing too egregious in Sector 2 where I'm concerned with anything that's going on. It looks pretty straightforward. I'll be able to get the wins that I need to get in there. If I end up finding that I complete this sector early, which it actually looks like is very possible, this is where I might start throwing in my Jedi Master Luke team with Kelleran Beck and IG-12 and Grogu, just to try to build up some of those wins early on pushes, right? So I'm going to look for easy opportunities. If possible, I'm not going to prioritize them, but easy opportunities like maybe a Bad Batch node if it happens to fall on my lap, where I'll be able to outspeed them relatively easily and take out a whole team on a push, and not have to worry about going back for that later. Sector 3, we have defeat 50 enemies with droids, gain momentum 1,000 times, attempt to inflict Purge 300 times, and gain Foresight 300 times. Now the thing to remember about Purge is that it does not actively attempt to inflict unless they have less than 6 stacks. Okay, so this is a little bit different than some other debuffs, because if they're at 6, your Inquisitors don't even make an attempt here. I don't actually think that this is terribly hard as long as you have Grand Inquisitor. However, for those of you that do have Third Sister, I just push with that team. Okay, a Third Sister led team is going to give you 5 times 5, 25 to 30 stacks on each battle just starting the battle. I am going to try to slow down the team and take away stacks and build up stacks and drop stacks to hopefully get like 50 to 60 per battle, but I'm not terribly concerned. It's not something that I'm worried about. If I have to go back and do this on a Datacron node later, it doesn't feel like a waste to me, because I am earning something from it, and the Inquisitors are a really good push team for that. Again, I'm using Third Sister. Grand Inquisitor lead works, I don't want to say just as well, but it does work well. You're just not going to start with all of those stacks right off of the bat. When it comes to Sector 3, after the Inquisitors, I'm going to look to use my Tuskins. I do have a couple of Relic Tuskins. The new ones are not Relic. I have been doing the Tusken cheese since momentum became a thing in Conquest. And when I had G11, G12 Tuskins, it's not a terribly hard feat to do, but I am going to be looking for very specific nodes. So I'm going to be looking for Imperial Troopers, Ewoks, Mon Mothma, Any of those three are going to kind of help me with my Tuscan momentum. Imperial Trooper seems to be the best one for being able to get tons and tons and tons of momentum in just 1 to 2 battles. Okay, so I'm going to be looking to do that pretty quickly, and this is where I might actually veer off of a hard node path if I happen to see one of those teams available, because otherwise I'm going to get relatively stuck and I'll have to use one of the really, really, really hard cheeses with like JML in the team and Voluntary Vanguard, and I really, really don't want to do that. I am going to be using my JMK, GMY, Ahsoka Tano, General Kenobi, and Mace Windu team again for the Foresight and for my Grand Republic wins. Now I know that stamina becomes an issue, so really what I'm going to try to do with my Galactic Republic team is use them towards the beginning of a sector as much as possible, so I can at least allow some of that stamina to clear up each day. If I find this to be problematic, then I am going to have to switch out 1 or 2 of these guys and do it a little bit slower. But as long as I get Zealous Ambition, that Padme team is going to push just as well. I'm not too concerned. Now, this is where I kind of alluded to Reddit, right? I am going to be looking for a Geonosis team, if possible, so that I can do the Treya and stop trick, where you throw in a Treya lead, you go against a Geo node, you have Voluntary Vanguard with a strong tank, let all the Geos hit that strong tank, Stop will clean them up with his AoE. So I'm looking to see if that's going to work for me well, so that I can get that those 60, 50 kills out of the way as quickly as possible. Even if I have to do it 4 times a day throughout the day, it's fine, doesn't matter. I'll do what I have to do. Again, there's really nothing too egregious here, and that 40 battles with Grand Republic, a lot of these sectors are leaning into those quite handedly. One notable boss node that we have here, though, is Win with Boss Nass surviving. A lot of people aren't going to have him at 7 stars. Once again, we're on defensive data disks, so right now, without knowing what's going on, I'm not too terribly concerned by it. Sector 4, we have defeat 50 enemies with Imperial Troopers, attempt to inflict ability block 60 times, gain stealth 120 times, and win at least 14 at least. Why did it say at least? Whatever. Win at least 14 battles with a full squad of Rebel units. So I have Leia, right? And I'm going to lean into Leia as much as possible. I'm going to probably see if I can get away with like a cheaper team like Leia, R2, C-3PO, Kyle Katarn, and Drogon. And that'll give me Rebel wins, quite a bit of stealth, and some ability block. I'm not counting on ability block being something that I get a ton of, but this is again where we talk about soft cheeses versus hard cheeses. I'm going to use my soft cheeses to kind of start here. And later on, I can use Vader and whatever Massacre, Merciless Massacre, if I really want to get those later on, or if I really need them. But the more that I can get just from pushing, the better. If you don't have Leia, a CLS team is going to work really well here anyway. You're going to get those Rebel wins. You're going to get a little bit stealth, okay? Not as much without R2. That's something you can hard cheese later on with like a JML team or like a Ray team if you really, really need to. And I can't remember if anyone on a CLS team is going to give you ability block off the top of my head. But again, you can go back to Vader if you really need to. I was concerned about the Imperial Troopers at first because mine are not great. As long as I get a Leader's Resolve, I think I'll be pretty good with Veer Star Piet, Dark Trooper, and Range Trooper. I'm probably going to look for something like a Bad Batch node just because they don't have any added speed to them. So that'll allow me to outspeed them and hopefully build up a turn meter train as soon as possible. Probably not going to use them as a heavy push team just because mine are not super great. But there are a lot of Imperial Trooper teams in the game now where this shouldn't be an issue for people who have definitely invested in them, especially with like Armored Gus Fring, with Iden teams. They're just not where I've prioritized my roster, so I'm going to look to try to find other ways around it. Once again, I'm going to use that JMK team, right? I'm going to get my GR wins, I'm going to get stealth, and I'm going to get an ability block. I'm going to go for a JMK, Mace Window, Shock T for the stealth, Cat just because it's going to help me with some deletes and I can use her now, and probably Tech as well. Mace Window should do enough tanking for me, but with Voluntary Vanguard, JMK should also be doing that, keeping Tech safe. And I'm pretty sure, off the top of my head, should give me some of the things that I need there. I think ability block, maybe stealth. I know I looked it up last night, but now it's 7 in the morning, I'm drawing a blank. If I really need to, and I get to the end of the sector and I'm having problems and I don't have enough of those ability blocks, then, you know, I'll throw in like Lord Vader and Darth Vader, or pop up help and Darth Vader, just to try to rack up as many of them as possible. But I don't think it's going to be too terribly big of a concern for me. Going into Sector 5, we have defeat 50 enemies with Inquisitorius, win 14 battles with no tanks in your squad, attempt to inflict blind 80 times, and attempt to inflict invasion down 80 times. Now this is also, again, where we talk about hard cheese versus soft cheese, right? Chupio is really great for a hard cheese on blind. JML and Old Ben are really great for a hard cheese with evasion down. I don't think it's going to be too big of a problem with me. I'm going to be using my CLS Rebels. That's going to give me some evasion down. It's going to give me blind, and it's going to give me no tanks. Normally I would put this on auto. I'm not going to put this on auto because I am going to prioritize using blinds with Chupio so I can get as much of them on pushes as possible. And because Chupio afflicts evasion down on his basic and always assists, that should be pretty easy. I'm going to use my Reva Inquisitors to get my Inquisitor kills, and I should be able to get blind. I don't remember which one of them does it. It's 7th Sister or 8th Brother, but I'm going to be looking for a Jedi team because that's where I'll be able to inflict that blind. I'm hoping by the end of the sector that I won't have to go back for a blind, but that's not that hard with JML. You take in JML, you take in Chupio, you take in somebody like Hermit Yoda, and you just try to really slowly go through. I'm going to be looking for Jedi for the Inquisitors. I'm also going to be looking for Phoenix, just so I can try to stall a little bit, all right? When it comes to debuffs, that's going to be an easy stall team. I'll throw in CLS with that. I think with everything else in these data discs, CLS should be able to kill Phoenix, but even if they can't, I'll be able to knock evasion down and blind out in literally one battle if that's the case, right? So not terribly concerned. When we look at the teams that I'm using, the only one that is kind of egregious in that they're new is Leia. Okay, so there's nothing that I'm using that isn't multiple years old. So the mid-grade to high-grade accounts shouldn't have too much problems here. The only thing, and I kind of said I wasn't concerned about this before, but the only thing I am mildly concerned about is Lightside Mandalorian surviving, just because we don't have Amplify Agony. But with the data discs available, if I do get the ones that I want, so like a Leader's Resolve, so like a Zealous Ambition, I don't think it's going to be insurmountable. It is just something that I would have to do on Sector 1, hopefully on a bonus node. Okay, so basically what I'm looking at right now, I'm looking at all of these battles, and Conquest 1, you could max Conquest 1 in like 90 to 100 battles. And the last couple of Conquest cycles, we were looking from a growth of that 90 to 100 to 120, 150. We're now at like 250 to 275 battles expected in order to finish Conquest. Looking at this specific Conquest, I actually think I can finish this in under 200 battles. It doesn't look as terrible as the last cycle. I don't want to say it's easy. It is going to push a small amount of teams quite a bit, but I do want to say it is a little bit more straightforward. It is a little bit more cheesable than ones before. And I do think that the Amidala unlock rate is going to be relatively high in comparison to the averages. Bane had a huge unlock rate comparative to the averages. I don't know if we're going to get as high as that, but we are going to have something that's pretty nice. So once again, I do hope that this helps. If you have any other questions, hit me up on Discord. Egnards with a lowercase e. Our Discord server is in the description. Hit us up over there. We have a lot of helpful people. I want to see as many unlocks as possible. I love to see players kind of gaming the system, and I'm always there, and I'm always there to help you guys out with that. So with that said, peace out.